In a small town tucked away in the heart of the Midwest, life moved at a slow and steady pace. The streets were lined with cozy homes, friendly neighbors exchanged warm greetings, and the air carried an aura of peace. But beneath this seemingly idyllic surface lay simmering tensions that had gone unnoticed by most people for years. This was especially true when it came to issues of race and power. At the center of this quiet storm stood Judge Evelyn Carter, a woman whose presence commanded respect wherever she went. She was not just any judge. She was one of the youngest federal judges in the country, a remarkable achievement for someone so early in their career. What made her even more extraordinary was her unwavering dedication to fairness and justice. Born and raised in a modest household, Evelyn had faced her share of challenges growing up as a black woman in a world where opportunities often seemed stacked against her. Yet instead of letting those obstacles break her spirit, they fueled her determination to create change. Evelyn's journey to the bench was nothing short of inspiring. After excelling in law school, she worked tirelessly as a public defender, fighting for individuals who couldn't afford proper legal representation. Her reputation for being fearless and fair quickly spread, earning her the trust of many. When she was appointed as a federal judge, it felt like a triumph, not only for her, but also for the entire community. People looked up to her as a beacon of hope, a living example of what could be achieved through hard work and integrity. But not everyone shared this admiration. In fact, some people resented her deeply. Among them was Sergeant Daniel Graves, a veteran officer in the local police department. With his gruff demeanor and rigid adherence to outdated traditions, Graves represented everything Evelyn stood against. He believed strongly in maintaining order in the town, even if that meant bending the rules or turning a blind eye to misconduct. Over the years, he had built a reputation for being tough on crime, though whispers about his questionable methods had begun to circulate among residents. Graves harbored prejudices that ran deep, shaped by years of clinging to old-fashioned ideas about authority and race. To him, Evelyn's rise to prominence was not something to celebrate but rather a threat to the status quo. He disliked how she consistently ruled in favor of holding law enforcement accountable, particularly in cases involving allegations of excessive force or racial profiling. Every time she dismissed charges against someone arrested under dubious circumstances, Graves grew angrier. He saw her decisions as personal attacks on him and his fellow officers, convinced that she was undermining their ability to do their jobs effectively. The breaking point came during a high-profile case involving a young black man named Marcus Johnson. Marcus had been pulled over by two patrol officers late one evening for allegedly speeding. What started as a routine traffic stop quickly escalated when the officers claimed they found a small amount of marijuana in Marcus's car. Despite his insistence that the drugs weren't his, Marcus was arrested and charged with possession. The case eventually landed in Judge Evelyn Carter's courtroom. During the trial, Evelyn carefully reviewed all the evidence presented before making her decision. She noticed inconsistencies in the officers' testimonies and pointed out that no dashcam footage existed to corroborate their version of events. Based on these discrepancies, she ruled that there wasn't enough credible evidence to convict Marcus and dismissed the charges. While Marcus and his family celebrated the verdict, Graves seethed with anger. To him, Evelyn's ruling was yet another slap in the face, a deliberate attempt to embarrass the police department. It didn't take long for Graves to hatch a plan. Fueled by resentment and a desire to teach Evelyn a lesson, he approached two other officers, Ryan Keller and Marcus Pike, with a scheme to frame her for drug possession. Both men were loyal to Graves and shared his disdain for Evelyn, making them eager participants in the plot. Together, the trio devised a strategy to plant illegal narcotics in Evelyn's car and arrest her under false pretenses. They believed that destroying her reputation would send a clear message. No one, not even a federal judge, was above them. Late one night, as Evelyn drove home from a long day at the courthouse, Graves and his accomplices put their plan into motion. Using their squad cars, they orchestrated what appeared to be a routine traffic stop. Pulling her over under the pretense of a minor violation, they surrounded her vehicle with flashlights blazing. Evelyn immediately sensed that something was off. She knew she hadn't broken any traffic laws and calmly asked the officers to explain why she had been stopped. As Graves questioned her, Keller and Pike began searching her car without her consent. Evelyn protested, reminding them that they needed probable cause to conduct such a search. Ignoring her protests, the officers rummaged through her belongings until Pike emerged triumphantly, holding a bag of cocaine. "Found this in your glove compartment," he announced smugly, waving the evidence in front of her. Evelyn's heart sank as she realized what was happening. She demanded to call her lawyer, but the officers refused to listen. Instead, they handcuffed her and placed her in the back of a squad car, treating her like any other criminal. As they drove away, Evelyn stared out the window, her mind racing. How could this be happening? She had always prided herself on staying above reproach, yet here she was, accused of a crime she didn't commit. What Graves and his team didn't know was that their actions were being recorded. A neighbor living across the street from where Evelyn was pulled over had recently installed a surveillance camera outside their home due to concerns about recent break-ins. The camera captured every detail of the encounter, including the moment when Graves, Keller, and Pike tampered with Evelyn's car and planted the drugs. Unaware of its existence, the officers continued with their charade, confident that they had gotten away with their scheme. Little did they know that this single piece of footage would become the key to unraveling their web of lies and exposing the truth about the corrupt system they thought they controlled. For now, however, Evelyn sat in the back seat of the squad car, grappling with the reality of her situation. The road ahead promised to be long and difficult, but Evelyn was determined to fight back. She had spent her entire life standing up for justice, and she wasn't about to let anyone take that away from her, not even those sworn to uphold the law. The arrest of Judge Evelyn Carter sent shockwaves through the small Midwest town. News of her supposed involvement in drug possession spread like wildfire, leaving residents divided. Some were quick to believe the worst, while others, staunchly, defended her character. The local media wasted no time sensationalizing the story, plastering headlines across newspapers and television screens that painted Evelyn as either a victim of injustice or a hypocrite who had fallen from grace. For Evelyn, the days following her arrest felt surreal, like she was living someone else's nightmare. When Evelyn arrived at the police station after being taken into custody, the atmosphere inside was tense. Officers who once greeted her with respect now avoided eye contact, their faces unreadable masks of discomfort. She was processed quickly, fingerprinted, photographed, and placed in a holding cell. Despite the cold metal bars surrounding her and the harsh fluorescent lights overhead, Evelyn refused to let despair take hold. Her mind raced as she replayed the events of the traffic stop over and over again. Something about the way Graves and his team had acted seemed rehearsed, almost mechanical. Their smug expressions when they discovered the cocaine gnawed at her. This wasn't just an honest mistake, it was a calculated attack. Her thoughts turned to her family. How would they react? What would they think when they heard the news? Evelyn knew how much her parents and siblings admired her, not just for her accomplishments, but for the values she represented. They had always been her biggest supporters, cheering her on during every step of her journey. Now she feared they would feel betrayed, not by her, but by the system she had trusted so deeply. She couldn't bear the thought of letting them down. As soon as word reached her family, chaos erupted. Her mother, Margaret, burst into tears upon hearing the news, clutching the phone tightly as if trying to shield herself from the weight of what was happening. Her father, James, sat silently in his chair, his jaw clenched and fists balled up. He had always instilled in Evelyn the importance of standing tall in the face of adversity, but this was different. This wasn't just a challenge. It was a full-blown assault on everything she stood for. Evelyn's younger brother, Michael, immediately called their extended family and close friends, urging everyone to rally around her. "We're going to fight this," he said firmly, "no matter what." While her family scrambled to process the situation, Evelyn's legal team sprang into action. One name kept coming up repeatedly: Benjamin Hayes, a renowned civil rights deep attorney known for taking on high-profile cases involving police misconduct. Hayes had built a reputation as a relentless advocate for justice, winning several landmark cases that exposed corruption within law enforcement agencies. When Evelyn's family reached out to him, he didn't hesitate to accept the case. From the moment he walked into the police station to meet with Evelyn, it was clear he meant business. Hayes listened intently as Evelyn recounted every detail of the traffic stop, asking probing questions to ensure he understood the sequence of events perfectly. His sharp eyes missed nothing, and he scribbled notes furiously in a leather-bound notebook. When Evelyn described the officers' behavior, their eagerness to search her car without probable cause, the suspicious manner in which they produced the drugs, Hayes nodded knowingly. "This smells like a setup," he muttered under his breath. "Don't worry, Judge Carter, we'll get to the bottom of this." With Hayes by her side, Evelyn began to feel a glimmer of hope. But outside the confines of the police station, public opinion continued to swirl unpredictably. Social media platforms buzzed with heated debates. Some commenters accused Evelyn of hypocrisy, questioning how someone entrusted with upholding the law could allegedly break it so blatantly. Others pointed fingers at the police department, arguing that the charges reeked of retaliation. Activists and community leaders organized rallies in support of Evelyn, holding signs that read, "Justice for Judge Carter, and corruption has no place in our courts." The town square became a battleground of competing narratives, reflecting the deep divisions simmering beneath its surface. Meanwhile, Graves, Keller, and Pike celebrated their apparent victory behind closed doors. Back at the precinct, the trio exchanged congratulatory slaps on the back, convinced they had finally silenced the judge who dared to challenge their authority. Graves poured himself a drink and raised his glass in a mock toast. "To justice," he sneered. Finally, she got a taste of her own medicine. But even as they reveled in their triumph, cracks began to form in their confidence. Keller voiced concerns about whether anyone might suspect foul play, especially given Evelyn's prominence. "What if people start digging?" he asked nervously. Graves dismissed his worries with a wave of his hand. "Relax," he snapped. "She's guilty until proven innocent. By the time anyone figures it out, it'll be too late." Unbeknownst to them, however, there was already someone watching. Across the street from where Evelyn had been pulled over, a neighbor named Harold Jenkins reviewed footage from the surveillance camera he had installed weeks earlier. At first, Harold hadn't paid much attention to the traffic stop unfolding outside his window. But as he scrolled through the recordings later that evening, something caught his eye. The grainy black and white video showed two officers leaning into Evelyn's car, fiddling with the glove compartment before pulling out a small object and holding it aloft. It was unmistakable. They were planting evidence. Harold's heart sank as he realized the implications. He had always been wary of the police, having witnessed questionable behavior in the past. Yet he never imagined he'd stumble upon something as egregious as this. Torn between fear and outrage, Harold hesitated to come forward. If he exposed the truth, he risked retaliation, not just against himself, but possibly against his family as well. Still, the weight of what he had seen gnawed at him. How could he stay silent knowing an innocent person was being framed? For days, Harold wrestled with his conscience. He confided in his wife, Linda, who urged him to do the right thing. "If you don't speak up, who will?" she asked gently. Finally, after much deliberation, Harold decided to reach out to Benjamin Hayes. He sent an anonymous email containing a snippet of the footage, careful not to reveal his identity just yet. Hayes responded almost immediately, arranging a discreet meeting to discuss the evidence further. When Hayes viewed the full video, his expression hardened. Here was undeniable proof of wrongdoing, a smoking gun that could exonerate Evelyn and expose the officer's malicious intent. However, he also recognized the risks involved. Whoever provided the footage was putting themselves in grave danger. Hayes assured Harold that measures would be taken to protect his identity, emphasizing the importance of his bravery in coming forward. "You're doing the right thing," Hayes told him, "and we won't let anything happen to you." As preparations for Evelyn's defense gained momentum, the stakes grew higher. Every piece of evidence mattered, every witness counted. Hayes worked tirelessly, combing through police records, interviewing potential allies and building a case strong enough to dismantle the false narrative spun by Graves and his accomplices. For Evelyn, each passing day brought new challenges. She faced sleepless nights, endless phone calls, and constant reminders of the fragility of trust in institutions meant to serve and protect. Yet, amidst the turmoil, Evelyn remained resolute. She refused to let bitterness consume her, focusing instead on the bigger picture. Through handwritten letters to friends, colleagues, and supporters, she expressed gratitude for their unwavering belief in her innocence. "This fight isn't just about me," she wrote in one letter. "It's about ensuring that justice prevails for everyone regardless of who they are or where they come from." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring countless individuals to join the growing movement demanding accountability. Though the road ahead promised to be fraught with obstacles, Evelyn drew strength from those standing beside her. With her family's love, her lawyer's determination, and the courage of ordinary citizens like Harold Jenkins, she prepared to confront the forces arrayed against her. Little did she know that the battle was only beginning, and that the truth would soon shine, brighter than any lie. Benjamin Hayes wasted no time diving headfirst into the investigation. With decades of experience under his belt, he knew how crucial it was to act quickly and meticulously in cases like this. Every detail mattered. Every inconsistency could be a thread that unraveled the entire scheme. From the moment he saw the surveillance footage Harold Jenkins had provided, Hayes understood they were dealing with something far bigger than just a single act of corruption. This wasn't just about framing Judge Evelyn Carter. It was about exposing a culture of abuse within the police department. Hayes began by dissecting the official police report filed on the night of Evelyn's arrest. The document was riddled with holes. For one, the officers claimed they had probable cause to search Evelyn's vehicle based on her alleged erratic driving. But Hayes reviewed the dashcam footage from their squad cars and found nothing to support this claim. Evelyn's car had been steady, her movements calm and deliberate. There were no sudden swerves, no speeding, and certainly no signs of reckless behavior. It was clear the stop had been fabricated, a thinly veiled excuse to pull her over. Things only got worse when Hayes compared the officers' testimonies. Sergeant Daniel Graves, Officer Ryan Keller, and Officer Marcus Pike had each submitted written statements claiming they discovered the cocaine hidden inside Evelyn's glove compartment during a routine search. However, their accounts didn't match up. Graves said he personally opened the compartment after noticing it looked slightly ajar. Keller insisted he was the one who found the drugs while checking for registration papers. Meanwhile, Pike vaguely mentioned seeing the others retrieve the bag, but couldn't recall specifics. These contradictions painted a picture of confusion, or perhaps desperation, as if none of them wanted to take full responsibility for planting the evidence. The inconsistencies didn't stop there. Hayes requested access to additional records related to the traffic stop, including radio communications between the officers leading up to Evelyn's arrest. What he uncovered was startling. Before pulling Evelyn over, Graves had explicitly instructed his team to make sure we get her tonight. There was no mention of observing any traffic violations or suspicious activity, just a premeditated plan to target her. The chilling directive confirmed what Hayes already suspected. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a carefully orchestrated attack designed to ruin Evelyn's reputation. As Hayes dug deeper, he turned his attention to the broader patterns of misconduct within the police department. He subpoenaed years' worth of internal affairs reports, citizen complaints, and disciplinary actions involving Graves and his accomplices. What emerged was a disturbing trend. Over the past decade, all three officers had been accused multiple times of using excessive force, falsifying evidence, and engaging in racial profiling. Most of these allegations had gone unpunished due to lack of concrete evidence or pressure from higher-ups within the department. In fact, many victims of their misconduct had either dropped their complaints out of fear or settled quietly without pursuing legal action. One case stood out in particular. A young Latino man named Carlos Rivera had been arrested 2 years earlier on charges of resisting arrest. According to Carlos, he had been walking home from work when Graves and Keller approached him without provocation, accusing him of loitering near a convenience store. When Carlos asked why he was being stopped, the officers allegedly became aggressive, slamming him against a wall and twisting his arm behind his back. They then planted a small knife in his pocket and charged him with carrying a concealed weapon. Though Carlos maintained his innocence, he eventually pleaded guilty to avoid jail time. Knowing the odds were stacked against him, Hayes reached out to Carlos, who reluctantly agreed to testify against the officers if it meant preventing others from suffering the same fate. While Hayes pieced together the larger puzzle, Evelyn continued to endure the emotional toll of her ordeal. Public opinion remained divided, with some people still clinging to doubts about her innocence despite mounting evidence pointing to a setup. Anonymous messages flooded her social media accounts, ranging from supportive notes to cruel taunts questioning her character. One particularly hurtful comment read, "If you're so innocent, why did they find drugs in your car?" Evelyn deleted the message without responding, but it lingered in her mind long afterward. She couldn't help but wonder how anyone could believe she would jeopardize everything she had worked for over something as trivial as a bag of cocaine. Her family rallied around her, providing a steady source of strength during moments of doubt. Her mother, Margaret, spent hours praying and cooking Evelyn's favorite meals, determined to keep her spirits high. Her father, James, reminded her daily of the importance of perseverance. "You've faced harder battles before," he told her firmly. "This is just another test, and you'll pass it with flying colors." Even Michael, her younger brother, stepped up, organizing fundraisers to cover legal expenses and rallying friends to attend protests demanding justice for Evelyn. Despite the overwhelming support, Evelyn struggled to shake off the feeling of isolation. Being at the center of such a high-profile case made her hyper-aware of how fragile trust in institutions could be. She thought often about the countless individuals who had fallen victim to similar injustices, but lacked the resources or platform to fight back. For every person fortunate enough to have allies like Benjamin Hayes and Harold Jenkins, there were dozens more left voiceless and powerless. This realization fueled her determination to see the case through, not just for herself, but for everyone who deserved better from those sworn to protect them. Meanwhile, Harold Jenkins wrestled with his decision to come forward. After sending the initial snippet of surveillance footage to Hayes, he had agreed to meet in person to discuss next steps. Sitting across from the seasoned attorney in a nondescript cafe on the outskirts of town, Harold felt a mix of relief and anxiety. On one hand, he was glad to finally share the burden of knowledge with someone capable of making a difference. On the other hand, he couldn't shake the fear of retaliation. What if Graves and his team discovered he was the whistleblower? Would they come after him? His wife, Linda, tried to reassure him, reminding him of the precautions Hayes had promised to take. "They won't know it's you," she said softly. "And even if they do, we'll handle it together." To ease Harold's concerns, Hayes arranged for him and his family to enter a witness protection program temporarily. Though reluctant at first, Harold eventually agreed, understanding the gravity of what was at stake. The full surveillance video became the cornerstone of Evelyn's defense, offering irrefutable proof of the officer's wrongdoing. Hayes ensured the footage was securely stored and shared only with trusted investigators, minimizing the risk of leaks or tampering. Back at T, the precinct, Graves, Keller, and Pike grew increasingly uneasy as rumors of an ongoing investigation began to circulate. At first, they dismissed the whispers as baseless gossip, convinced that no one would dare challenge their authority. But as subpoenas arrived and colleagues started avoiding them, panic set in. Keller suggested destroying any remaining evidence that might incriminate them, including old case files and confiscated items stored in the evidence room. Graves vetoed the idea, fearing it would only draw more attention to their misdeeds. Instead, they opted to double down on their story, rehearsing their alibis and pressuring fellow officers to corroborate their version of events. Their efforts to cover their tracks only deepened the hole they were digging for themselves. Investigators uncovered discrepancies in the chain of custody for the cocaine allegedly found in Evelyn's car. The bag bore no fingerprints, raising suspicions that it had been handled with gloves to avoid leaving traces. Furthermore, lab tests revealed the substance hadn't been in contact with air for more than 48 hours prior to its discovery, a timeline inconsistent with the officer's claims that it had been sitting in Evelyn's glove compartment for weeks. As in, the pieces fell into place. Hayes prepared to file a motion to dismiss all charges against Evelyn. He also submitted a formal request for an internal affairs investigation into the officers involved, citing the overwhelming evidence of misconduct. The stage was set for a dramatic showdown, one that would not only determine Evelyn's fate but also shine a light on the systemic issues plaguing law enforcement in the town. For Evelyn, the anticipation was excruciating. She knew the truth was on her side, but the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on her shoulders. Would the system finally hold the perpetrators accountable, or would they slip through the cracks once again? As she sat in her living room late, one evening flipping through old photo albums filled with memories of her journey to the bench, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. No matter what happened next, she resolved to remain steadfast in her pursuit of justice. Because, in the end, that was what truly mattered. Not the titles or accolades, but the unwavering commitment to doing what was right. The courtroom was packed to the brim on the day of the pretrial hearing. Reporters jostled for seats in the gallery, their cameras flashing like strobe lights as Judge Evelyn Carter entered the room flanked by her attorney, Benjamin Hayes. The air buzzed with tension, a mix of anticipation and disbelief filling every corner. For weeks, rumors had swirled about the surveillance footage that supposedly proved Evelyn's innocence, but no one outside her inner circle had seen it yet. Today, all eyes were fixed on the screen mounted at the front of the room, waiting to see what secrets it held. Hayes stood confidently before the judge presiding over the case, a stern-looking man named Judge Arnold Miller, known for his no-nonsense demeanor. "Your Honor," Hayes began, his voice steady and commanding, "we have uncovered irrefutable evidence that not only exonerates my client, but also exposes a grave miscarriage of justice orchestrated by members of the local police department." He paused briefly, letting the weight of his words sink in before continuing. "With your permission, I'd like to present this evidence now." Judge Miller nodded curtly, signaling for the video to be played. As the grainy black and white footage flickered onto the screen, an eerie silence fell over the courtroom. The video showed Evelyn's car parked along the curb, its headlights still glowing faintly in the dim evening light. Moments later, 2 squad cars pulled up behind it and 3 officers stepped out, Graves, Keller, and Pike. Their body language was unmistakable, hurried, deliberate, almost choreographed. They approached Evelyn's vehicle with flashlights in hand, surrounding it like predators circling prey. The camera zoomed in slightly as Graves leaned into the driver's side window, while Keller and Pike moved toward the passenger side. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The footage captured Keller reaching into Evelyn's glove compartment, pulling out a small plastic bag, and holding it aloft triumphantly. There was no mistaking what had just happened. They had planted the cocaine themselves. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as spectators processed what they were seeing. Some people buried their faces in their hands, others whispered furiously to their neighbors. Even Judge Miller looked visibly shaken, leaning forward in his chair to examine the screen more closely. When the video ended, Hayes turned to face the prosecution team, his expression fierce. "Ladies and gentlemen, does anyone still believe my client is guilty?" he asked pointedly. The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding eye contact with both Hayes and the jury. It was clear the damning footage had left them, scrambling for answers they didn't have. But Hayes wasn't done yet. He called Harold Jenkins, the neighbor who had provided the surveillance footage, to testify. Harold walked nervously to the witness stand, his hands trembling slightly as he swore to tell the truth. Under Hayes's gentle questioning, Harold recounted how he had installed the camera to monitor recent break-ins in the neighborhood and stumbled upon the footage purely by accident. "I couldn't believe what I was seeing," Harold admitted softly, his voice tinged with emotion. "These officers were framing someone, an innocent person, and I knew I had to do something." Harold's testimony struck a chord with the audience. many of whom nodded sympathetically. His courage in coming forward despite the risks resonated deeply, especially among those who had doubted Evelyn's innocence. As he stepped down from the stand, several people in the gallery clapped quietly, earning sharp glares from the bailiff tasked with maintaining order. With the prosecution's case crumbling under the weight of the new evidence, attention shifted to the officers themselves. Internal affairs investigators descended on the precinct, launching a full-scale probe into Graves, Keller, and Pike's conduct. Dozens of anonymous tips poured in from current and former officers, civilians, and even victims of past misconduct. Each tip added another layer to the growing web of corruption within the department. Stories emerged of falsified reports, stolen property, and racially motivated arrests, all tied back to the trio. Faced with mounting pressure, Ryan Keller cracked first. During a grueling interrogation session, he broke down in tears, confessing to planting the drugs in Evelyn's car and implicating Graves as the mastermind behind the scheme. He said she needed to be taught a lesson, Keller stammered, his voice shaking. That she was too soft on criminals and didn't respect us. We thought it would scare her into backing off. Keller's confession sent shockwaves through the department. Marcus Pike followed suit shortly afterward, corroborating Keller's account and adding chilling details about other incidents where they had tampered with evidence or fabricated charges. Both men expressed regret, claiming they had gone along with Graves's plan out of fear of retaliation if they refused. But their apologies rang hollow in the face of the lives they had ruined. Sergeant Daniel Graves, however, refused to admit defeat. When confronted with the mounting evidence against him, he lashed out angrily, accusing his colleagues of betrayal and insisting he was being made a scapegoat. In a desperate bid to save himself, he requested a private meeting with investigators, hoping to negotiate leniency in exchange for information. What transpired during that meeting shocked even the most seasoned detectives. Graves arrived at the interrogation room looking disheveled, his usual bravado replaced by raw panic. He pleaded for mercy, dropping to his knees in front of the investigators. "Please," he begged, his voice cracking. "I'll tell you everything. I'll give you names, dates, anything you want. Just don't throw me away for this. I've got a family to think about." For a man who had once wielded so much power, his display of vulnerability was jarring. Despite his pleas, there was no escaping the consequences of his actions. Investigators documented every word Graves said, using his admissions to build a comprehensive case against him and his accomplices. By the time the dust settled, dozens of wrongful convictions linked to their misconduct were overturned, and settlements were awarded to victims who had suffered years of injustice. For Evelyn, watching the unraveling of the conspiracy was bittersweet. On one hand, she felt vindicated knowing the truth had finally come to light. On the other hand, she couldn't ignore the toll the ordeal had taken, not just on her, but on her family, friends, and the community at large. She spent countless nights reflecting on the fragility of trust in institutions meant to serve and protect. How could something like this happen in plain sight? And how many others had fallen victim to similar schemes without anyone noticing? Her resolve only grew stronger as the days passed. With her name cleared and her freedom restored, Evelyn returned to the bench with renewed purpose. She used her platform to advocate for sweeping reforms within law enforcement, pushing for increased accountability, transparency, and training to prevent future abuses of power. Her speeches resonated far beyond the confines of the courtroom, inspiring activists and lawmakers across the country to take action. As for Graves, Keller, and Pike, their fates were sealed. Stripped of their badges and uniforms, they were sentenced to lengthy prison terms for conspiracy, perjury, and obstruction of justice. Locked away in cells far removed from the authority they once wielded, they served as stark reminders that no one, not even those tasked with enforcing the law, was above it. Guards reported that Graves often sat alone in his cell, staring blankly at the walls, haunted by the realization that his arrogance had cost him everything. Back in the town where it all began, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as possible after such a seismic event. Residents gathered for community meetings to discuss ways to rebuild trust between citizens and law enforcement. Activists organized workshops aimed at educating young people about their rights and encouraging them to speak up when they witnessed wrongdoing. And Evelyn? She remained a steadfast symbol of resilience and integrity, proving that even in the darkest moments, justice could prevail if enough people dared to fight for it. Though the scars of the scandal would linger for years to come, the town emerged stronger and more united than ever. For Evelyn, that was the greatest victory of all. Not just clearing her name, but sparking a movement that promised to create lasting change. The fallout from the scandal rippled far beyond the small Midwest town where it began. What started as a targeted attack on Judge Evelyn Carter quickly snowballed into a national reckoning about systemic corruption within law enforcement. The EIDU story dominated headlines for weeks, sparking debates on television talk shows, social media platforms, and dinner tables across the country. People were outraged, not just by the audacity of Graves, Keller, and Pike's actions, but by the realization that such abuses of power might be happening in other towns and cities without anyone noticing. For Evelyn, returning to the bench felt surreal. She had spent months fighting to clear her name, enduring sleepless nights, public scrutiny, and emotional turmoil. Yet stepping back into her courtroom robes brought a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Her experience had changed her deeply. It wasn't just about delivering verdicts anymore. It was about ensuring fairness, protecting the vulnerable, and holding those in positions of authority accountable. Every decision she made carried extra weight now, knowing firsthand how easily justice could be manipulated. Her first case after resuming her duties involved a young woman named Maria Alvarez, who had been wrongfully arrested during a protest against police brutality. The parallels between Maria's situation and Evelyn's own ordeal weren't lost on anyone in the courtroom. As Evelyn listened intently to the arguments presented by both sides, she leaned forward slightly, her gaze steady and unwavering. When she finally delivered her ruling, dismissing all charges against Maria due to insufficient evidence, the room erupted in applause. It was a symbolic moment, not just for Maria, but for everyone watching. Justice, Evelyn reminded them through her actions, wasn't negotiable. Outside the courthouse, supporters gathered with signs bearing messages like, "Thank you, Judge Carter," and "Justice prevails." Strangers approached Evelyn to shake her hand or offer words of gratitude, their eyes filled with admiration. For many, she had become more than a judge. She was a beacon of hope, proof that even when the odds seemed insurmountable, standing up for what was right could lead to change. Evelyn accepted their praise humbly, always redirecting attention to the broader movement taking shape around her. "This isn't my victory alone," she told reporters during one press conference. "It belongs to every person who refuses to stay silent in the face of injustice." Meanwhile, the ripple effects of the scandal continued to spread. Dozens of cases handled by Graves, Keller, and Pike were reopened, leading to overturned convictions and settlements for victims whose lives had been upended by false charges. One particularly poignant example involved a single father named James Holloway, who had served 2 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. After his release, James struggled to rebuild his life, grappling with job loss, strained relationships, and lingering trauma. Thanks to the investigation sparked by Evelyn's case, James received financial compensation and an official apology from the city. More importantly, he regained something priceless: his dignity. The revelations also prompted sweeping reforms within the local police department. Under intense public pressure, city officials implemented mandatory body cameras for all officers, established independent oversight committees to review misconduct allegations, and introduced stricter penalties for those found guilty of falsifying evidence or abusing their authority. Training programs focused on implicit bias and de-escalation tactics became mandatory, aiming to address the root causes of discriminatory practices. While some critics argued these measures didn't go far enough, others saw them as crucial steps toward rebuilding trust between law enforcement and the communities they served. Evelyn played an active role in advocating for these changes, using her platform to push for accountability at every level. She gave speeches at conferences, wrote opinion pieces for major newspapers, and partnered with civil rights organizations to draft legislation aimed at preventing similar scandals in the future. Her advocacy extended beyond policing, touching on issues like criminal justice reform, voter suppression, and economic inequality. To Evelyn, these topics were interconnected threads in the fabric of society, each one influencing the others in ways that couldn't be ignored. Her efforts earned her widespread recognition, including awards from human rights groups and invitations to speak at prestigious universities. But despite the accolades, Evelyn remained grounded, never losing sight of why she had chosen this path in the first place. At a gala honoring her contributions to justice, she delivered a speech that brought the audience to its feet. "True, justice isn't about punishing the guilty," she said, her voice firm yet compassionate. "It's about creating systems that protect the innocent, uplift the marginalized, and ensure that no one is above the law, not even those sworn to enforce it." Back in her hometown, the community came together in unprecedented ways. Residents organized forums to discuss race relations and policing, inviting experts, activists, and local leaders to share insights and solutions. Schools incorporated lessons on civic engagement and ethical leadership into their curriculums, teaching students the importance of speaking out against wrongdoing. Even businesses got involved, sponsoring initiatives aimed at supporting victims of police misconduct and funding scholarships for aspiring lawyers committed to public service. Harold Jenkins, the neighbor whose courage had helped expose the truth, became a symbol of ordinary heroism. Though he initially feared retaliation, the support he received from his community and the protective measures put in place by authorities gave him peace of mind. He often attended rallies and events alongside Evelyn, sharing his story to inspire others to come forward when they witnessed injustice. "I used to think I was just one person," Harold admitted during one panel discussion, "but now I know that one person can make a difference if they're brave enough to try." As for Graves, Keller, and Pike, their fates served as sobering reminders of the consequences of corruption. Locked away in separate prisons, they faced harsh realities far removed from the power they once wielded. Fellow inmates, aware of their crimes, treated them with disdain, further isolating them from any semblance of camaraderie. Guards reported that Graves, once so arrogant and domineering, had become withdrawn and defeated. Rumors circulated that he spent hours writing letters to his family, begging for forgiveness and promising to change if given a second chance. But the damage had already been done, not just to his career, but to the lives of countless individuals affected by his actions. Keller and Pike fared little better. Both men struggled to adapt to life behind bars, haunted by guilt over the harm they had caused. In letters to investigators, they expressed remorse, claiming they had only gone along with Graves's plan out of fear. While their apologies may have provided some closure for victims, they did little to erase the scars left behind. Some victims chose to forgive, finding solace in moving forward. Others vowed never to let their guard down again, determined to remain vigilant in the face of potential threats. For Evelyn, the journey wasn't without its challenges. Even after being exonerated, she occasionally encountered skeptics who questioned whether she truly deserved to reclaim her position. Anonymous messages criticizing her decisions still appeared online, though less frequently than before. Rather than letting negativity consume her, Evelyn channeled her energy into mentoring young judges and attorneys, imparting lessons learned from her own experiences. "Don't let setbacks define you," she advised them during one workshop. "Let them strengthen you. Use your voice, your knowledge, and your passion to create a better world." Years later, the town where it all began transformed into a model for reform and resilience. Crime rates dropped significantly, thanks in part to improved community police relations. Activists celebrated milestones achieved through collective effort, from passing landmark legislation to electing progressive leaders committed to equity and transparency. And at the center of it all stood Judge Evelyn Carter, a living testament to the power of perseverance, integrity, and faith in the possibility of change. In her final reflection, Evelyn penned a letter to her younger self, imagining what advice she might give if she could travel back in time. "Dear Evelyn," she wrote, There will be days when the world feels heavy, when the weight of injustice seems unbearable. But remember this: you are stronger than you think, braver than you feel, and capable of achieving things you can't yet imagine. Trust in the goodness of people even when it's hard to see. And never stop fighting, for yourself, for others, and for the kind of world we all deserve. That letter, tucked away in a drawer alongside photographs and mementos from her journey, encapsulated everything Evelyn had come to represent. Through pain and triumph, doubt and determination, she had emerged not just unbroken, but unstoppable. And in doing so, she had ignited a spark that would continue to burn brightly, lighting the way for generations to come.